He's got
40,
something.
50,
He's got it.
40,
He's got it.
20, 10.
He's got it.
End zone. Touchdown Titans. There are no flags on the field. It's a miracle. Tennessee has pulled a miracle.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in. We are at another episode of the 1796 Titans podcast. We got the whole gang here tonight. Myself, Ryan, Jack, Code, the whole crew's together, so that's nice. We're right in the thick of things. We're about to be halfway done with preseason. Everybody watched the game last week, obviously. So preseason wins don't matter, but it still feels good. I mean, I'm sure everybody can relate to that. Like, you'd rather win. So that was cool. Got a win over the Niners. So we'll start with Ryan. Ryan, what were your big takeaways from that game?
Number one, we have a backup quarterback that won't tank our season if something happens to Will Levis. Number two, the defensive play calling is night and day. They don't sit back on their heels. That 4th and 5 play where they sacked Dobbs for like 25-yard loss. I think it just bodes well for the rest of the season. Those were my two big takeaways.
Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, so my big takeaways were the starting O-line. They did really well, not only in the running game, but in the passing game as well, keeping Levis pretty clean and, opening up some big holes for, Spears and Pollard in the backfield.
Yeah. Code?
I'm going to go with O-line and Spears and Pollard. I think that the tandem of Pollard and Spears have a chance to be absolutely lethal this season.
Yeah, I thought it was really exciting. I mean, especially given you don't know what's going to happen, like with the, what the Derrick Henry-less Titans are going to look like. So, I mean, it's not the regular season yet, but it was a good start. Kind of shows like the potential that they have. And then, you said the line. I thought the starting line was fantastic. The presumptive starters, there's nothing to complain about. The backup line, it is kind of scaring me, which, I mean, they're backups. Like, they're not going to be amazing or anything. I was impressed by Mason Rudolph. It's nice that we have a backup quarterback who isn't going to cost you the game. Like, he is a backup for a reason, but he's not going to cost you the game. And you can't really say that about Malik Willis. So
I'll compare him to like a Nick Foles type deal.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, like Nick Foles, early career Matt Castle, like somebody who's like, he's not going to cost you the game, but he's not going to like do anything spectacular either. But yeah, I mean, I think it's nice. What did y'all think about Malik? So like, it was kind of a mixed bag. Like, I saw some people that said they thought he looked much better than last year. I personally didn't. I thought he looked the same as he always has, which is not good. He played the whole second half and he threw 7 passes. If his first read isn't there, he panics and runs. And he still is doing that in his 3rd season. So I don't think that's getting any better. I don't think there's any competition for the backup spot. I mean, I think they'll probably keep him just because he's the only other quarterback on the roster and you might as well keep 3. But Ryan, what did you think?
I mean, I agree that he still looks sporadic in the pocket. He's still not comfortable, it seems like, in the pocket. I do think it's a shame that the best throw I've ever seen him make was taken back by a penalty. That dot on the sideline.
Yeah, Bryce Oliver on the sideline. That was beautiful.
Yeah, but I mean, again, it doesn't matter as much as it did in the last 2 years when you have Mason Rudolph, which is why that was my biggest takeaway.
Jack, what do you think about Willis? Do you think there's any competition at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think we're really going to be able to tell upcoming tomorrow because Malik is going to be the starter. And so we'll kind of see. I think they want to see what he can do. And I wrote about it earlier today that I think this will probably be a make or break game for Malik, whether or not he's going to be on the 53.
Yeah, for sure. Code, what do you think about Malik? I don't know if I've ever really heard you talk about Malik, honestly.
Let me be honest. If we take away teams, if we're looking at somebody else's team, he's a phenomenal human being. He's a phenomenal athlete. But there's some players that it just doesn't translate. Do I want to see him succeed because he's on our team? Absolutely. I don't think that I'm not saying pocket awareness, but when anything breaks down or chaos starts to happen, and you will quote me and mock me for the rest of the year on this, but he doesn't have the Will Levis in him to improvise.
No, I think you're exactly right.
And yeah, that's me versus last year being fully on board. He's our boy, so I guess I'm gonna jump on the Mayo train.
Bro, this tells you how down bad I was at one point. I had a Malik Willis jersey, like I thought he was the real deal. Like I was so excited when we drafted him. I was like, because he's a great guy, like super nice guy, but I think it kind of shows you like the reason teams were skeptical of him because he played against like Eastern Virginia State in college. Like the level of competition wasn't great playing at Liberty. He never ever took snaps from under the center. So I mean, and, it is at the end of the day, it's a backup quarterback.
And you're looking at the same situation with Liberty with Caden Salter. I mean, obviously, Caden Salter is a phenomenal quarterback, and that's kind of me going off the rails talking about that. But
I mean, but
competition
it is something,
level.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to consider. I mean, yes, there are obviously small school quarterbacks that are good, but anyway. And then with the line, so we kind of got a big surprise out of nowhere. With Sadiq Charles just randomly deciding he doesn't want to play football anymore. He took a couple of days off from the team and then said he wasn't going to play football anymore, so he retired, which sucks because he was slotted in to be the right guard, the starting guard. And, I mean, his numbers are not great. Like from a career in Washington and stuff, like he was never spectacular. But all reports from camp where he was doing phenomenal and, like, he was going to be the starter. So with him gone, Radens is going to move into that spot. And from what we've seen so far, I don't think there's anything you can be mad about that. I mean, I think it hurts the depth for sure, but I'm excited to see Radens get an actual chance. So I'm pretty excited about the line. The one thing that worries me though is NPF at right tackle. Ryan and I talked about it off air, but I really think we need like a depth tackle addition or something because I don't trust NPF. But and then Brunskill, so I don't know if there's like more to it, or maybe they just like his depth, like his versatility, his depth. But I was a little bit surprised that like they're not having him with the starting unit. Like I figured he would be the starting right guard again because he did fine last year, I thought. But Ryan, what do you think about the line?
Yeah, I think like you said, I think a piece needs to be added just for safety. I'm fine with giving Radens a chance at right guard, but like you said, with MPF at right tackle, I think you're going to need a Dennis Kelly type, that ultra utility lineman that can play either tackle. He can play pretty much anywhere on the line. I think you need a piece like that, which they don't grow on trees, but I think Rand should be looking for that at this point.
And to be fair, we didn't really get to see Leroy Watson yet. And I mean, if Bill Callahan likes him, I think we should trust that. Mm-hmm. So, he's a swing tackle that should be on the roster. So, Jack, what do you think about the current state of the line?
Yeah, my biggest worry is basically the right side of the line, obviously Radens to MPF. And so, we really need to figure that out, especially the right tackle spot. I feel like right guard, we're at least pretty even with Brunskill Radens as they're kind of battling that out. I think Radens is probably going to win in the end. But we do need, like Ryan was talking about, somebody like a Dennis Kelly, just a vet that can come in and not be a superstar, but just hold it down, I think, in case either MPF doesn't work out or he gets injured or something of that nature. Because if something happens to MPF, we're in a lot of trouble, I think. Because we only got Leroy Watson and Jalen Duncan and John Ojokwu at that position. And so I think what's going to happen is Rain is going to start scouring the waiver wires once teams start cutting down players and seeing what we can do along the offensive line, because we're a little bit low on depth at the tackle position in terms of skill that is necessary in order to have a sustainable offensive line.
Yep.
Yeah, and Jalen Duncan sucked ass last year, so I don't really know if that doesn't really make me feel good that he's one injury away from playing potentially, but. Code, what do you think? I mean, I think our line is obviously in a better position than it was last year at this time. But
we're better than last year, and I'll agree that we just need to find one piece. Obviously, I know you're not going to go out and get him. He kind of signed with who he signed with last year on a whim. But we need somebody like a Jason Peters. I know that sounds weird to say in 2024. I'm not saying, like I said, to sign him, but his experience and somebody that can at least help mentor some of those younger guys, I think that would be beneficial. I don't have any complaints about the offensive line. I mean, we've seen what they've been the past 2 years, and in my personal opinion, I don't think it can get any worse than we've already freaking seen.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think, God, famous last words, but I don't think NPF can be any worse than like Dennis Daly or who was that? Andre Dillard.
Yeah.
I don't think he can be much worse. So, some standout things that caught my eye from the first preseason game. So, I was disappointed with the running game as a whole because, well, Pollard, looked really good but he was with the starting offensive line, and Haskins had a couple good runs with the starters. Now, if you look at the way the running backs performed with the backup line, it sucked, and I felt bad for Jabari Small because he got the most carries by a lot, and he ended up with 18 yards on 10 carries, and it wasn't really his fault. Like, if you watch the game, every time Jabari Small touched the ball, he was getting killed. And that sucks because you can't really evaluate him fairly. Like Julius Chestnut, all four of us have seen Julius Chestnut play for 2 years now, and he's a pretty good backup running back. And he couldn't get anything going either. So hopefully the running game gets to take off a little bit tomorrow. I thought it was kind of cool because Mason Kinsey just won't go away. Like he's been on the team for, it seems like 10 years, and he never makes the team, but he gets kept around the practice squad, and he makes plays in the preseason. I thought it was cool that, Ridley got a catch for 22 yards. It's always good to see. Treylon got a catch. Pollard got a couple catches. The return game is exciting to me because Jaquan Jackson, the rookie, had a nice little punt return. He had a 26-yard punt return, which is not something that Titans fans are used to seeing. And then Kyrus Jackson, he had that long. He had a 63-yard return that resulted in, a touchdown. So that was really cool. Both of the Jacksons, like, with some electric return ability, which is something that it seems like we've never had since, like, that one Mariana year.
Well, Bryce, if they just catch the damn ball, we'll be doing better than we have been the last 2 years.
That's a fact.
I think
like the Monday night game that we were winning against the Dolphins and we had to have that miraculous comeback, we started to lose because we couldn't catch the ball back there. So just catch the ball, and any return expertise is just, icing on the cake.
Yeah, and let's not field the ball inside the 10-yard line either.
Yeah.
Or y'all remember does everybody remember the legendary Darius Raynaud play?
Up against Pittsburgh, season opener. Yep.
He took a safety on a kickoff return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So,
the Titans did end up winning that game, though. Maybe we should start every game with a ridiculous safety.
Yeah. So now it looks like we finally have, a decent return game, which is good. You want more speed. You always want more speed. On defense, so Chance Campbell had a hell of a game, and I'm not gonna lie. On all of the roster predictions that I've done for Titans Wire, I never included Chance Campbell on my final roster projections because if you look at the linebacker room, I just don't see how he fits, especially with James Williams and Jamal Adams are kind of like linebacker safety hybrids. So you got to assume Kenneth Murray is obviously one of the starters, and for some reason, Dr. fucking Gibbons is a starter, and then you have Otis Reese and you have Cedric Gray. So I just kind of assumed Chance Campbell was not going to make it, but he dominated last week. I mean, he had the game-sealing interception. He led the team in tackles. He had a sack. That was a cool little performance for him. You got to kind of start thinking about him more. And our boy, me, Code, and Ryan's boy, Gabe Judy Lolly, had the second most tackles. So maybe he might be working his way. Yeah, I mean, he might be here come September. You never know.
Yeah, because Jabari's definitely not.
I think Jabari's going to have like a 100-yard game tomorrow to get back in the running.
Yeah, and Bryce, I was talking to you yesterday about this, but I think the casual fan overrates the actual games in the preseason. I think what goes on in training camp day in and day out matters a lot more. But for right now, it's not looking good for Small. I do think it's looking good for Gabe Judy Lolly, just talking from a Tennessee Vols standpoint. But I think the reason Gibbons and Campbell and everybody is, ahead of Cedric Gray on the depth chart is simply because Gray is injured. He's not getting the work. I think Gray will easily be one of the starting inside linebackers by the time October rolls around, maybe even earlier. So I wouldn't put too much stock in the Chance Campbell, but like you said, it is a nice little story,
Jack, who do you think is going to be the? I mean, I know it in these day and ages when you have so many sub packages and stuff, you're barely in your base defense. But who do you think are going to be the two starting inside linebackers?
I think right now for sure, Kenneth Murray Jr. Absolutely. I even heard L'Jarius Sneed in practice say that he's the leader of the defense. And I thought that was really interesting coming from L'Jarius Sneed, and he didn't choose Jeffrey Simmons with that. So that was definitely kind of interesting to hear. And I think next to him will probably end up being Jack Gibbons or Chance Campbell will supplant Jack Gibbons maybe on the depth chart with a good game tomorrow. So I really think that's going to probably be the day one starter. It's going to be Kenneth Murray or Chance Campbell and Jack Gibbons opposite of Murray.
I kind of hope it's Jamal Adams. I know like they're not going to do that. They have him listed as a safety on the depth chart right now, but can we talk about that for a second? I feel like, Code, you'll appreciate this. I've bitched for years about it and I know it's not this simple, but it always has seemed like under the John Robinson, Mike Vrabel tenure, it just seemed like there was always another solution. Like there was something that could have been done and they just didn't want to do it for whatever reason. Like Vrabel and Robinson just loved relying. Like, why would we sign a former Pro Bowler when we can rely on a white undrafted player? Oof. Like we have Trey Avery and Eric Garror. Why would we add a corner? And now it's totally not that. Like 3 years ago, this team would have never added Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams at the end of the summer. And I just think that's really cool. Like, I mean, people are going to say they're washed just because they signed with the Titans. People are going to say they're washed, but you're signing
It's where veterans go to die.
Yeah, I mean, that's never going to – but it tells me the team's trying. Like, they see that these young undrafted free agents suck, and then that's not going to cut it. Like, we're actually trying to add talent to the roster. So, and Diggs is listed as a starter, by the way, which I think is interesting. I wasn't so sure that who would be there between Adams or Diggs, but I'm sure all three of them will play a ton of snaps, Hooker, Diggs, and Adams. But Code, do you still think Adams or Diggs can contribute?
No, definitely. Not necessarily at the level that they were. And I was talking with a Falcons fan. I know that's weird to bring up, but they are celebrating. Obviously, Judon was a good big ad, but they're like overjoyed that Justin Simmons got signed by them. And then everybody, it's like, oh, that's the greatest pickup in the world. And then people talking about Jamal Adams getting signed by us. Oh, he's washed. Oh, he's washed. Oh, he's washed. It's like, okay, so the narrative, because it's the Titans, is the player's washed. That's why he's there. Or are we adding a veteran presence that can benefit even when they're not on the field to be able to help the younger guys that they are around? Because whether the veterans brought in to contribute on the field, the veterans are going to contribute off the field as well. And that's going to help the younger players develop all in all. So that stigma with us is kind of annoying, but I say shut up and let them play ball and see if they still got anything. Quandre Diggs has still got a lot left in the tank. And Jamal being the hybrid way, I think that's going to be beneficial. I know we all hated to see the mayor go away, Kevin Byard, but something had to be done. He was getting killed.
Yeah, for sure. And I know I talked to Ryan about it, but I wrote about it a couple weeks ago. I thought it was interesting. Amani Hooker had a comment at one of the training camp practices where he said that he thinks, last year was a great year for Hooker. Like, statistically, he was amazing. PFF gave him a really good grade. It was he had his career high in tackles. It was a great season, but he said after training camp one day that he thinks he'll be even better this year. And when they asked him why, he said that he's going to actually be able to do his job, basically implying that last year the corners sucked ass and he had to help them out too much. So when you don't have Christian Fulton and Sean Murphy bunting, you can actually focus on being – he actually has real corners to play with now. So,
yeah.
like you, Code, I think you had a great point about even if they have lost a step, they still know what they're doing. Like, they still know the game. Like, do you think L'Jarius Sneed is going to be caught with his pants down? Like, I'm pretty sure Cheeto and Jamal Adams are not going to be confused about what the play is. Like, they're going to be in the right spot. They're going to be coaching up these young guys. It's hard not to look at this secondary and be excited.
Yeah, Bryce, even the backups in the secondary, I mean, just on the depth chart that was released this week after the first preseason game, Trey Avery is a backup, Eric Garror is a backup, Elijah Molden is a backup. Three guys we were relying on heavily last year, and we saw where that got us. And then even I think the Titans, and I'll kick it to you here in a second, Jack, so you can elaborate on this, but I think the Titans got an absolute steal in Jarvis Brownlee Jr., just based on what everybody's been saying about him throughout training camp.
Yeah, Jarvis Brownlee Jr. has been really showing good work out there in training camp. I think even DK Metcalf over this past week actually gave him a shout out that he was actually, going toe to toe with him because, of course, with Chidobe out and L'Jarius Sneed, it's really been Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and McCreary getting the starting snaps as the outside cornerbacks. Just like last preseason game, they were both starting cornerbacks on the outside. And so I think Jarvis Brownlee Jr. really has a great inside track to, be the next heir apparent to on the outside corner. And I think that's really good for this team because I think he can sit and learn from L'Jarius Sneed for a year or two and Chidobe Awuzie. And then once those contracts probably become a little too heavy, then they're going to probably offload them. And then Jarvis Brownlee Jr., because he has the size, he has the speed, and he's physical, and he'll get in there. And so I really look forward to what Jarvis Brownlee Jr. has. And I think to add on what y'all were talking about earlier with Gabe Jeudy-Lally, I think he's going to be probably the last cornerback on the depth chart. come the 53, because I think he's gonna take Trey Avery's spot, because Trey Avery, we've seen what he's been able to do, and so honestly, the secondary is probably the best positional group the Titans have probably ever had in their history, and so I'm really excited about the Titans secondary this year.
Yeah, I mean, Trey Avery is going to be on the bench. If he even is on the roster, he'll be on the bench, which is good. And Brownlee is very exciting. I honestly think, well, speaking of, let's slow down a little bit. I love Brownlee, but we got to talk about another Titans rookie we haven't mentioned yet. A bunch of people on Twitter were like panicking about how T'Vondre Sweat didn't record a statistic against. They're like, oh, he was dominating in training camp, but then when he plays against another team, he can't do anything. Okay, well, he got double teamed on every single snap. And let's be honest, let's call a spade a spade. He knows that he's making the team. It's not like he's probably not giving 100% in the preseason. He knows he's making the team. I think that's a nothing burger. I think if he does that in the regular season for a couple games in a row, I'll be concerned. But the dude is a monster. He's dominating in training camp. The coaches have loved everything they've seen from him on the field. I don't think there's anything to worry about with T'Vondre. And we know Jeff is dominant. I mean, did y'all see the video of Jeff just tossing that Seahawks lineman like 10 yards?
Ragdolling him, yeah.
Yeah, and then Sebastian Joseph Day is a solid vet. That's a scary front three, in my opinion. Like Joseph Day, Big Jeff, and T'Vondre, I think. And you know what? Someone else who I wanted to shout out who impressed me last week was Keandre Coburn, who Sweat is friends with. They both went to Texas. I don't know, Ryan, we watched the highlight last night. Coburn like chased Josh Dobbs down for the sack at the end of the game. Mm-hmm. That's like that's a 350-pound man chasing down a pretty agile quarterback. Like that play really impressed me, because like it's a preseason game and he didn't give up on it. He chased him across the field and got the sack. That's just the kind of stuff you like to see. So it does suck. I don't know if y'all saw, but Marlon Davidson got hurt and he's going to be out for the year. He was a nice depth rotational piece last year, so that sucks for him. But I think there's a lot to look forward to with our defense. I mean, the one thing I think you can question is the edge rushers. And I did want to show you all that one of the sites listed us as – so Hassan Reddick requested a trade from the Jets, and one of the sites listed us as like a logical trade candidate for Hassan Reddick.
No chance in hell.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if it was the Vrabel, Vrabel wouldn't have touched him with a 10-foot pole. But Jack, what do you think about the Reddick situation?
Well, I mean, it's definitely interesting, and he would definitely help for sure. I mean, he had 11 sacks last year with Philadelphia. So I mean, I don't know what it would cost to get him, but regardless of cost, he would be an asset to this team, because right now we kind of don't know what's happening with Arden Key. Is he going to be suspended? Is he not going to be suspended? And even so, Arden Key, what did he have, like 6 or 7 sacks last year, something like that? Nothing that was extraordinary. But I mean, I can't imagine Hassan Reddick, Harold Landry, Jeffrey Simmons, T'Vondre Sweat, all on that front seven, going to work. And so, I mean, depending on the price, I don't think it's going to happen, especially because of the contract that he's going to ask for. But he would be an asset on this team, but I don't think it would be worth it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jack. I mean, you already made your big trade this offseason, acquiring Snead, and I think that was enough. I think the assets, you want to keep those assets now. But it is a concern when you're going to be relying on Rashad Weaver if Arden Key ends up being suspended for the time that was originally reported. Going to be relying on Shane Ray, who hasn't played in 7 years, hasn't recorded a stat in 7 years. So I think somebody needs to be added, but Reddick is probably a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes me nervous because he's been on the Jets for like 6 months. Like it's not like he's, a rookie that's underpaid. So that would make me nervous. Code, you said hell no. So I
Yeah,
wonder.
I will lead this, as I've said before, of having a fanship, if you want to call it, duality between two teams. The way I am with the Eagles and Titans. Titans take precedence, but I think we have a good thing going with our defense, and Prima Donna coming in kind of sets the wrong standard. Would I love to have Reddick? 110%. Yes, the performance would be outstanding, but you don't want to throw that type of wild card into something that's going well. Just in my opinion.
No, I definitely agree. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah, there's no reason to shake up. Like I said, the player love the drama. It's ridiculous. That comes with that. He's been with the Jets for 6 months. You're making the money. You already know that you're a starter. What don't you like in New York versus being in Philadelphia? Do you want to go to somewhere? Are you ring chasing? Are you tired of the work? Do you not like leadership? There's so many questions that come into that type of situation. Or is your agent just filling your head with, oh no, you need to get out of here. Oh no, you need to get out of here, which is also a factor. But
Well, I just think of it like there's so many other. Y'all all hit the nail on the head. There's so many other things we have to worry about right now. Like, I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is going to need an extension. Hopefully, Will Levis is going to get a massive payday in a couple seasons. Just it is kind of a weird fit. I mean, you already have Snead's contract, and you have Cheeto back there. I know Adams and Diggs are on cheap little 1-year deals, but Reddick's going to want a bag. I mean, that's the whole reason he's holding out, and you just don't want that drama right now. I don't think. I think everybody else kind of knows their place, and like we all discussed, everything about the defense is pretty good right now. So you're even kind of nitpicking to complain about the edge rushers. Honestly, I think Shane Ray. I mean, it's like Code said earlier. I know he hasn't played in 6 years, but even if Shane Ray is just a veteran presence, he's been successful in the NFL. I think he can help. If he can help Rashad Weaver learn a thing or two, or if, any of those guys on the edge can just learn from watching him, that's kind of invaluable. So I think the defense is in a pretty good spot. Oh, and by the way, Ryan, I know we talked about this off air as well about Nick Folk. So that kick that he missed, it did go down as a block, by the way.
Well, that's good because
Yeah,
if it wasn't, it was completely pathetic if it was not a block.
Yeah, so it looked bad at the time, but like it went down as a block, so he didn't shank it or anything. So I think Folk will be good.
Can we talk about the elephant that we haven't talked about at all yet, which I figured we would talk about first?
Can I guess it, Code?
Let's talk about the wide receivers, man.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Hopkins is solid. Ridley is solid. I think the pressure being off, and I know we talked about this briefly before, the pressure being off of him, I think Burks will have a decent year. It will not be astronomical, but I think that without having to be the two receiver that was trying to be pressured on him, I think it'll be I think he'll have a slightly more productive year. Nuck is going to do what Nuck's going to do. He's proven that. It doesn't matter. We're not worried about him. Ridley was getting clamped up pretty good and with what I was watching with the Seahawks cornerbacks, but I'm not worried about Ridley either, honestly. I mean, we have a chance, if everybody stays healthy, to be one of the most dynamic wide receiver rooms in the league.
I don't think that's a stretch at all, and that's the first time in Titans history that you could say that and not be drug tested. Jack, what do you think? Where do you currently stand on Burks?
I'm not in on him. I'm not a believer. I don't think he's even done well really in practice. He's been so inconsistent. I've seeing reports him dropping ball. He'll make great catches and then he'll drop 2 balls. Great catches, drop 2 balls, whatever the case may be. And I'm not high on him. I think if I just had a choice between would I rather have Traylon Burks or Jaquan Jackson on the team in a vacuum? I'm taking Jaquan Jackson. I trust him, and I saw him tearing up the Seahawks in the practice this week. And he honestly, he's working hard. He deserves it. He's putting in the work with special teams. And I think, he provides more value than Traylon will this season. And so I'm not in on Burks. I would even put NWI ahead of Burks.
NWI is
as awful as that sounds.
No, it doesn't sound awful at all. NWI is ahead of Burks and Jackson, in my opinion. So the way I see it is, and I do agree with Code, though, I think it can only help that Burks is like the fourth or fifth option on the offense now. Like, that's going to help because he had that stigma in his head. And I mean, I'm sure he still does because, I mean, he was still a first-round pick. But everybody looks at it. They're not stupid. Like, Treylon knows that everybody's going to compare his career to A.J. Brown. Like, it's not fair, but that's what's going to happen. So I think even though he still has the stigma of being a top pick, I mean, the first three receivers are Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, no question. So at best, he's the fourth receiver. You have Pollard and Spears are going to catch passes. Chigg's going to catch passes. So Burks is like the sixth or seventh option at best. So I think Code's right. I think he could thrive in a role like that where he's not relied upon. If he had to be the wide receiver 1 or 2, we'd be looking at some serious issues. But I think it can only go up. I mean, if he still sucks when he's barely getting to play, then that's a different story. But I'm not fully giving up on him yet. I guess I'm kind of in the middle of you two. I'm not completely out on him. I'm completely out on him. I'm completely out on him ever living up to A.J. Brown.
100%. Yep. And I think that's all of us.
Yeah, that kind of, unfairly or not, that does affect how we think of him. Like, if Treylon was a second-round pick and wasn't traded for A.J. Brown, we wouldn't be so harsh on him. But, we'll see how it goes. Ryan, what do you think?
I think last episode we did, me and Jack talked about, back there in OTAs, Burks was projecting as a special teamer, which, as a first rounder, like we've been talking about, you were drafted to be A.J. Brown's replacement for better or worse. And obviously that's not going to happen. But I do agree with Code. If he does make the team and is, way down the depth chart and it doesn't have the pressure of making big plays where he has to make big plays for the team to be successful, I think he could be solid and catch 20 to 30 balls and have a decent season. But again, that's not what we expected of him. I think at this point, I agree with Jack that I would rather have Jaquan Jackson just because what he brings as far as the return game, if it came down to it. Because like you said, Bryce, Boyd, Hopkins, Ridley are your first three, no doubt, every day of the week. Westbrook-Akine is a solid veteran, and he's good on special teams as well. He's a good possession receiver. So at the end of the day, I do think Burks makes the team. But
he's not getting cut. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I just don't see why he doesn't, just because of his build and his potential, if he ever puts it all together. But
so I think honestly, I think there's only one spot up for grabs, unfortunately, because Nuke, Ridley, Boyd, Westbrook are locks. They're not getting cut. Burks is not getting cut just because just because of the draft pedigree. I know that this regime didn't draft him, but that will matter, trust me. And if he did get cut, he would get claimed. There's no scenario where Burks goes to the practice squad. Like, he's going to be on the roster for one more season at least. So that leaves one spot because you'd assume they'd keep 6. They could keep a 7th because of Hopkins' situation right now, but assuming most teams keep 6, so Jaquan Jackson, Kyrus Jackson, Mason Kinsey, Kyle Phillips, Bryce Oliver, all competing for one spot. Mason Kinsey gets cut every year, so I really doubt it's going to be him. Kyle Phillips has done next to nothing since he's been drafted. So, in my opinion, the 6 spots are taken. I think Jaquan Jackson is a shoe-in. What he can do on special teams, like Jack said, he's killing it in camp. I think Jaquan Jackson is the 6th receiver.
Well, and like you just said, Bryce, it also helps that he was a draft pick, even if he was a late one.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely factor things like that in. I mean, there's guaranteed money that he's getting, so that definitely matters. And then we got to talk about the running backs too. I know we talked about it a little bit, but you know Pollard and Spears are going to be the 1 and 2 in some form or fashion. You'd assume they're going to keep 4 because there's no fullback, so you'd assume there'd be 4 running backs. And right now, it's kind of hard to tell. I am not a Hassan Haskins fan. Ryan knows this. I've always hated him. I think he runs like he has cement in his shoes. He had that domestic abuse thing last year. It's just a weird situation. But being objective, he's earned the 3rd running back spot. The three of the 4 of us are incredibly biased and are going to say Jabari Small should get the 4th spot. But it'll probably be Chestnut if I had to guess, just because he's been around. I don't know, but Code, what do you think? Do you think Jabari can still crack the team?
Depending on how the rest of the preseason goes, I know the last thing that we recorded, I was high on Jabari making the roster or even coming to us. Obviously, being a little biased with the Vols side of me, but they're making it seem like he's not really part of the scheme, the way that they want things to be ran. And in reality, if you look back at the way Heupel ran things last year, I know he killed it for us, but it was kind of the Jalen Wright, Dylan Sampson show, and then he was in the shadows of that. So I hate it for the guy because he's a phenomenal back. He's a phenomenal athlete. Just don't see him falling into our scheme to where there is a viable roster spot unless for some reason he breaks out and decides he wants to return kicks or punts for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think it's also running backs a spot you could see a scenario where none of them make it and there's an outside addition at some point, just as kind of like a bruiser maybe, like another, because Spears and Pollard are kind of similar style backs, like pass catching, shifty playmaker guys. So I don't know. It's not really that important. It's just interesting. We obviously have a vested interest in it. So
Leonard Fournette.
Yeah. I do think Judy Lally has a chance. I really do. So, I mean, we can go over that too. You obviously know Cheeto, Sneed, Brownlee, and McCreary. Like, those are the corners that are on the roster, guaranteed. So, you got to assume there's a couple spots, probably keep 6. So, Avery, Guerrer, Tay Gowan, and Judy Lally. I mean, that's pretty much it. I think there's definitely a chance. And honestly, he will definitely make the practice squad if he gets cut. So that's cool. That's a cool story. Jack, anything else you wanted to hit on before we get into tomorrow's game?
No, I'm good.
All right, real quick to wrap things up here, we will all give a thing or a couple things that we're looking for against the Seahawks tomorrow. So Ryan, you go first.
Well, based on what's been going on this week, you had the joint practices, longer practices than they had been that the team has been having. So obviously, you're not going to see many starters, if any. But I think this is going to be the game where the fringe pieces that are in jeopardy of being cut are going to separate themselves. And I really think that Malik Willis will probably play well just because he'll get a whole game. They'll probably tailor the game plan for him, but there's not really much that you can glean from that either. I will be at the game. What I'm looking for is for me to be drunk by the second quarter. That's what I'm looking for. Really not much else.
Some dynamite analysis there, Ryan. Jack, what are you looking forward to tomorrow?
What I'm looking forward to is the kick return game, punt return game. See if either of the Jacksons keep that momentum from last game. That's going to be pretty big. Definitely want to check that out. And then also, I think corner position with Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Gabe Judy Lally, and Trey Avery, because 2 of those 3 are going to make it. One of them won't. And so that's going to be the big thing. If Judy Lally, if he steals it from Trey Avery, which I really, really, really hope he can. And so I'm gonna be paying pretty close attention to that matchup there.
Code.
What am I looking forward to?
Yep.
Mine is going to be the stupidest of everybody tonight. Nothing changes with me. I want to see Stonehouse.
I don't know if you're going to get that wish, buddy.
Well, that's what I want to see Stonehouse since the injury. I want to know what he's doing, man. And besides that, I would like to see the fluidity of the offensive line, see if there's any depth, like we've talked about the whole episode.
Yeah, I want to see Morgan Wallen back out there punting for us. That'll be cool. And then, that's the big thing for me. I want to see if the backup offensive line is still going to be 5 turnstiles, because I know the Niners weren't playing their starters or anything, but the Niners are always an elite defense. They have depth. I mean, that's not the easiest team to go against. So we'll see if they can hold up better against the Seahawks. That's definitely something I'm going to keep an eye on, because right now, if you told me to do the final roster prediction, I wouldn't know who to include on the backup linemen because none of them looked good at all. Lachavius Simmons had a horrible game, and a lot of people have been talking him up all summer. He looked terrible. So that'll be interesting to watch. And then I want to see if any of the backup running backs or receivers can make a play like that's not in the return game. I want to see if, like I said, I know we're biased, but I want Jabari to break off a couple big runs. I want him to, put out some tape for the other 31 teams if he doesn't make this roster. So it'll be interesting to see who steps up behind Pollard and Spears, and then behind the 4 receivers we talked about, if anybody can step up behind that. So, and Ryan, you'll be in attendance, right?
Yeah, I will be there.
Yeah. Well, it'll be good. We only got one more of these to do, thank God. Like, I know, like, it's only 3 preseason games now, and it used to be 4, but, like, it still feels so tedious. Like, it feels like it takes forever. It's like I just want to see what the actual – because none of this matters. It matters for, like, 20 or 30 players, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying on a post is everybody is so hyped for preseason football to start, and then by the 3rd play, you're like, all right, this sucks.
Yeah, most of these guys are going to be playing for, like, the Saskatchewan Rough Riders next year, so it's kind of –
yeah.
But all right. Anything else y'all want to hit on before we get out of here?
I'm good, man.
No injuries.
Yeah, get out.
No, big no injuries.
Just get out clean, live another day. All right, so we'll be back next week before the final preseason game. And then after that, we'll do our season preview and final roster prediction. That'll be a fun one. So, all right, tighten up.
Tighten up.
Tighten up.